we tweet this out? Did you tweet it out from Hero Labs?
I did not. No, we're getting it though. The intern is tweeting us out right now. Welcome back, everybody. Deltafy Wednesdays with Hero Labs. Your host RT, Random Task 555 on Twitter. Crypto Messiah sitting here with me in the lab. Unfortunately, and we're very, very regret to inform you guys, but Rob and Dan couldn't make it today. They are stuck in the city at the office, not at their home studio where they can stream from. But they're grinding. They're putting together, what I would like to call the finishing touches on Hero Network, but don't quote me. I don't do any of that shit. I'm just the guy who sits here and looks at charts and keeps everyone up to date on the market. So right now, I'm in here with the King of the Apes, Crypto Messiah. We are a little bit weirdly euphoric on a otherwise shitty week because everything's bouncing and all of our bags are bouncing the hardest, and that's the best feeling pretty much in the world. So
it's not enough to succeed; others must fail.
Yeah. I want to be up, but I want to be up more than everything else.
For sure.
We seem to be just living in this bubble on the AVAX ecosystem the last few weeks, and then you add in sort of this like spell and Daniel Sesta and what he's built over even like ice and time, and it's these two bubbles that I personally have been existing in for the last month, and on red days they're less red, on green days they're more green, and it's just been a really fun trend.
I gotta tell you, this is like the first time for me where I've been in this kind of situation like you described, like when we're having like one of those days where look, we've been there, so like we know how it feels. Like you look on crypto Twitter and the energy is just like, it's just awful. It's because people are hurting. Like it hurts a lot to lose money, and I just feel like this is the first time for me at least where I've been like 100% allocated to strength to where I'm not really feeling that. Because like even yesterday, like of course, did it suck? Like was I drawn down? Yeah, I was, but when I was looking at my balance, it was like, like, can I really be, upset about that? Like, does that make any sense here? I think the answer is no.
And I'll be honest, I felt pain this week. I was not what I thought overexposed, but then when I really zoomed out and I looked at Zapperfy and I really looked at shit, I was like, oh, fuck, like I'm 88% exposed to like these things. And I had what I thought at the time was a pretty decent cash position, but things had gone well, and suddenly that cash position just wasn't holding the fort. And so, things got nasty. And as support retests often go, there was news and FUD to create a bigger fear. And this is what we've talked about, right? Like the market has this way of convincing you at support that it's the beginning of a bigger move. And we're not out of the woods yet. I mean, let's look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin, ETH, they both look like shit. They are both confirmed sort of like high, lower high breakdown. Like we are in bearish market structure on the majors. But again, we're just living in this bubble where things just keep making new highs. It's a different beast. Point is, I absolutely rotated some stuff this week, which is like a cool guy way of saying I sold some dips. But for the most part, I spent most of that capital already on things like ice. I loaded up some ice this week. Another Daniel Sesta coin. So, and the way spell's going, I'm just like, even if ICE came out and was like, oh, this is a neat project, I think it's just going to rally because of spell.
I mean, here's the thing, like, and Andre, of course, earned a lot of notoriety for doing this DeFi summer. Like, there are very few devs in the DeFi space that just have that magic touch, no pun intended. Like you do find a dev like that, they develop these cult-like followings, and for good reason. It's because anything that they touch is just fucking awesome. You look at the progress that, abracadabra, spell, magic internet money, whatever you want to call it, has made. It's been incredible. But the amount of work that, these developers are putting into the project, to spread this to all these chains, to make this vision real, is really just, it's mind blowing. So I'm definitely like a Daniel Sesta maximalist. Like anything that guy does, like I'm willing to punt pretty big on it, just because I know that he's not going to give up and he's going to do everything in his power to make it into something fucking huge. I think that
Well, he's
there's
just
lot
a
of
good
potential.
dude too. I mean, I think his principles are in the right place. With
He's an ape. He loves
yeah,
DeFi. He loves this community. And my
yeah,
favorite thing
I
is,
trust him.
and he's said this over and over. As a developer, he wants to make his investors rich, and I like that. Okay,
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. Yeah,
hey man, our interests are aligned here. Thank
having
you.
missed last year's summer and not like DeFi summer, like for the most part, I was in some stuff and whatever, but I was not in the DeFi, right? Like now I'm actually like, staking and farming and all this. I never really knew who Andre was. I would hear like, oh, new Andre project, new this project, and everything he touches, right? I kind of feel like that's growing here around what Daniel's building, his multi-chain theory.
Oh,
And
100%.
I mean, we'd like to get him on the channel at some point. I think we can probably pull that off. It was a little bit late last minute today around, Rob and Dan not being able to make it, but it's a conversation I'd love to have with him because I think he's got a broader vision of sort of what all the products he's building lead towards, and it's something he's probably the best guy to explain that. So we'll make an effort to invite him on here ad nauseum. He's an extremely busy guy, as you can imagine, so who knows. But I think as we get into this, because it has been an ugly week, let's be honest, aside from this little bubble that is manage risk and belong AVAX, this market sucks right now on the whole.
All sorts of fear. You
Yeah,
had
a lot
the
of
whole
fear.
Evergrande situation. Of course, crypto Twitter became Chinese bond experts over a period of 2 days, and there was a lot of fear
Yeah.
around that. Bitcoin retracing, from previous highs. Fear and greed index. Wow, look at that. In addition to all this,
We're in the
these
zone. Yeah.
fears of Fed tapering. Which I think have just been addressed as well. So at the end of the day, like when you look at these markets and you consider where we are, why wouldn't we go up from here? The only thing I keep telling myself is like Bitcoin's been around for a while, and Bitcoin is the daddy of the market here. It's still the boss. If Bitcoin's dumping, well, guess what? Crypto is dumping, and I think it's now or never here for Bitcoin. And I think I live in a world where Bitcoin succeeds. And when I say now or never, though, I just mean it in the sense
We
that
could afford one more leg, which is actually
Well-
what I think is going to happen. But let's see.
the super cycle has to happen. The super cycle is
Macro now or never. Yeah.
yeah,
Like
macro
no
now
2-year
or
bear
never,
markets.
no 2-year bear markets.
Yeah.
Like this is Bitcoin's chance. This is Bitcoin's opportunity to say, hey, I'm here. I'm a serious asset class. I'm here to stay. We're not going to be doing these ridiculous too long bear markets. We're not going to be doing this, that, whatever anymore. Like it's good to go. So I just think that, I'm not sure of the path it takes to get there. Do we go to 36K first? Do we go straight up from here? I really don't know, but I do know the high, degree of certainty that Bitcoin's going to go to 100K. I don't know when. I don't know if it's going to be this year or next year, but at the end of the day, does it really matter? If it's this year, next year, the year after, I don't think it does.
It doesn't really, when you zoom out, of course it doesn't, right? If it just gets there, you'll look back and laugh and probably be like, oh, I sold too much too soon or whatever. But as traders, as investors, as people who stare at charts, often you can tell on the pit who's looking at the 15-minute chart because they'll message and be like, oh, like everything's dumping, and I look and the daily's green. I'm like, what are you talking about? And so, yeah, I think in a sense, from your perspective, it can matter. Like I want to maximize the ride up. So I want to, I want to not sit through like a May, June, July situation again in positions. And so in that sense, the path absolutely matters. But yeah, like zoom out, where are we headed in 10 years? I think my view this year has been the 2020s. And that's what's kind of keeping my head up on down days and whatever. And especially hanging out with Rob, Rob on the show, bless his heart. He's not here today, but his macro view is so sound. Like it's just so objective. And and Dan tells stories about too, like, he's got some Bitcoin and he's, sitting through the bear market and every time it dips, he's like, we need to add, right? Like he just never sweat it because his thesis was so strong and he was so confident in, like you said, does it matter when it goes up? It will. And so they ended up being in a really good position, obviously on the ride to 60K. So hanging out with him has helped me zoom out more and see this stuff for what it is. having said that, I'm a TA guy, and I'd love to like see this coming, get short at this retest or like cash positions and then load up here and not have to suffer through, a week or two of drawdowns, because they sting, especially when you're in alts, right? Like Bitcoin draws down 10%, alts drop 40. At one point yesterday, I believe it was, AVAX was down 40% off of its highs, or 30%, something. I think it was something like that. And that stings. It stings when I was away for the weekend, and maybe could have seen some stuff up here. I think the drawdown was, it was not child's play. It was 30.1%, basically 31%. But look at this. So totally objectively, there's two ways you can look at this. Like at this exact moment, AVAX is in a short reload zone. It's it's like Chop City. We're moving up. Bitcoin and ETH are in downtrends at the moment. So this is not an area where I say like suddenly today I need to go and add to my AVAX. But the pump chaser zone this week, the PCZ, absolutely. I'm going to switch that to PCZ. Absolutely, it was an interesting area on the high time frame to be looking. But what was the sentiment when we were down here, right? Evergrande, 2008, housing crisis, 2.0, everything's going to go down. You look at ES futures, they were just totally nuking, which, to crypto guys, this doesn't look like much, but that's a big move. Biggest drop, really, according to this trend since the start of the year. So it's amazing, though, how quickly things shift, right? We get the Gensler interview kind of coming and going. And frankly, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Personally, I don't really think it's a big deal. Like I know a lot of people do, and they'll shoot me for that. But I think regulation has been coming. It is coming. And
regulation is coming for sure. I think the important thing to note here is that, while we can say regulation is coming all day, it does take time, for these regulatory actions to occur. And once again, you've got to be exposed to the market when the market is strong. You got to get your pound of bananas and you got to get out. The question becomes then, what is enough? Which is one of the most difficult questions you can ever ask, because there's guys that were 10x on Joe at $1, and it's over $4 now. And when they were 10x, they said, "Hey, I've had enough. I'm getting the fuck out of here. Like this is crazy. I made too much money too fast." And it's always great to take profits, but at the same time, like it's, in my opinion, it's the most difficult decision in trading. It's easy to get into something. It's hard to get out of it. But I think, in terms of like where we're at mainly right now, this AVAX DeFi stuff, I think it's strong near term. I don't know about medium term or long term, but near term, I don't think there's any kind of regulatory issues, around having that kind of exposure. And the amazing thing here is that we're being provided with this opportunity, fingers crossed, to do a bit of rotating. There's some great projects that haven't been marked up yet. Eventually, Bitcoin is going to, show up and show everybody it's king. I think that there's some awesome opportunities when AVAX is $100, over $100 to start peeling some off. Start putting it in Bitcoin. Get that sound money in your account. At some point, it's going to be 100K. I mean, the way I see it is, it doesn't matter when it happens. Like, whatever I put into Bitcoin right now, like I'm just kind of counting it in my head and like, hey, that's a 2x in the bag. Let's go.
I don't think we stop at 100K if we go there. I mean, if at that point, right, like what does it take to get us? First of all, you could argue that we're already there with 65, but there was a time early on, people say, "Oh, I wish I got into Bitcoin early," and people say, "Well, you know what? Weirdly, and this is probably the institutional viewpoint, and that's why they're all just buying now, is that it was almost more risky back then, obviously, because it hadn't been adopted. There wasn't a country saying this is legal currency and we're going to buy it, and there was just a lot less infrastructure. It was uncertain. It could have gone either way, and it was priced as such. And now it's in a place, it's at a price. It's got a level of sort of, what do you want to call it? Institutional adoption, if you will, perhaps penetration into, the global markets. That'll get you some eyebrows, right? So we're at a point now where I agree with you. And I think if we get, like I say, if we get to 100, what is it now? It's not going to be 1% of the global wealth finding its way into that, and that puts it at something ridiculously higher. Like, I think the cat's out of the bag, and so it's just a matter of not losing your shirt. Like we always say, like, get off the leverage. You can literally end up nowhere working. Like you want to trade leverage, cool, but you got to be really fucking good at trading. And I personally, I'm not even very good with leverage. I don't like it.
Yeah, me either.
I like to get into a bag and I know that, I missed the dip, but I still got the bag and it'll be fine. I'm not liquidated. I do like to trade on leverage here and there. And yeah, it feels great when you put on a position and, a few hours later it's up 5 figs and you're like, oh, damn, like that's 3 months salary.
300% gains.
Yeah, like 300% gains on a 20-minute run with 5-minute candles. But it's the other way too, right? And then you're just like, oh, just lost a month's salary. Like, and it doesn't take much when you play with leverage to have those kinds of numbers. You don't need a huge account, but either way, that's neither here nor there. I think you guys know our feelings about leverage in a market that is primed for outsized returns when you time it right, when you're, picking the right spots. And this was a tough week. I think this was a week that really shook people. And you need that to shake people out of a bullish trend. You need narratives, and China obviously presented like clockwork, another September, that's the title of the newsletter yesterday, like another China FUD September, like really? Not even crypto related, but global economy. Now here's the interesting thing. It was written on the chart to some extent, right? I think I often say this, like I could just not watch the news and be trading the charts. And a lot of times the things that play out, you'd be in position for anyways. Like the pennant that gets right to the edge and price moves to the end and then the volume starts to bubble up. And then the next day there's this big announcement and you're like, oh, that's why it pumped. It's like, well, as a TA guy, like I'd been like, oh, I'm getting long at the end of that pennant on the rising volume. So they do often align. And with this short reload zone, we got nuked down. Not that unusual. Not like I know exactly which part that's going to happen, but you can guess up here there will be a big resistance, and we got that. And then it bounced up, smacked into some other resistance, and suddenly there's China FUD. So these things tend to move in 3 waves. So I personally think that we're not done yet here. And having said that, I'm not shorting or going to more cash or anything like that. I'm just kind of waiting to add big before either we got to break above this level here. I'd like to see us like reclaim that.
There's a question on the chat.
Yeah.
Keo Dark says, Donald thinks we're going to mid 20K if we close below 42.3K today. Do you guys agree? How the fuck does that make any sense? Like why is it
I don't, but I'll tell you what, he might have, you look left, there's probably some weekly or daily levels, and he's just like, yeah, if we lose this big macro level, then, we're probably headed to another big macro level down below. I don't buy into that. And here's why I love this reload zone, because oftentimes, and this is actually what I think is going to happen, and for what it's worth, that's how I'm going to wait as far as like buying more Bitcoin. But you often get these reload zones, and it's right around where stop losses live. It's right around where like, those kinds of traders have lost their key level, and that's like the low. And so you get this move down, back up, back down. What do? We go up in here over the weekend, whatever it is. That's been the pattern lately. And then next week we come out, there's some new FUD. Who knows? But if we get that third drive down, that'll be right into this local reload zone. And if you guys zoom out, you'll recognize this is sort of just the fib pong, right? So you get the drop, go back up to short reload zone, go back into the reload zone, and that's consolidation. And it would sweep these lows. It would tap the support. It would hit the sweet spot. Like there's a lot of things here working for me. And I think it's brilliant that there are good traders, because Donald is a solid trader, that are basically saying like this is where they give up, because I just think it's silly to like speak in ultimatums like that. Like, so we're gonna make new lows because of one daily close, like with one level,
out there. Like, that makes
no
fucking sense.
As a prediction, I don't think there's any value to it, as with any of our predictions too. Like, but if that's his setup, that's his setup, and he's got a system, and that's cool. But I know him and Cred. I follow them on Twitter. I like their analysis, but it's different than mine, right? Like down here, we're at support. I was finding reasons on lower time frames to take shots against these lows, and a lot of their tune was like, we're going to wait until certain things are reclaimed and then get long. And as a trend trader, which is maybe how I would describe them based on what I've seen, but who knows how they describe themselves. And then you can catch this trend from like once it's reclaimed up until it's rejected. There's a small move in there in this case, and capture that. That's great. They didn't lose any money trying to guess the bottom. But for me, I like these reload zones because they just let you get long against lows and they get short against highs. So that works really well. And I'm often fascinated by how many really top traders are basically giving up on the bull case right around where I've got preset kind of buy levels, which is why I think these things are so effective. So we'll see. I think there's a non-zero chance we've just seen the low and that's the end of it. I think there's a decent chance we get 3 moves out of this.
I think a lot of the pullback, was because of these tapering fears. The Evergrande situation didn't help.
Yeah.
Pretty much like people worldwide were like, holy shit, Evergrande's going to cause this, awful global markets meltdown. The way I see it, look, we live in clown world and, this is a clown market. I think Sam Tabasco put it the best. And I read this, when I was in disbelief that Bitcoin was going up, and he had said, Alameda took a directional bet, a heavy directional bet on Bitcoin down there. And his thought process was that, look at equities markets. They've recovered from the dip. Why not Bitcoin? We're heavily correlated to those markets. We're a big boy market too. Why not us too? And the way I see it, look,
risk is on.
Yeah, risk is on. There's serious money in crypto now that's not going anywhere. That's looking to stay in crypto. The yield's better here. The risk reward is better here. It's been solidified as this amazing new emerging market and emerging asset class. Why not crypto too? So as far as I'm concerned, I'm looking at this and, hey, we got a nice balance in equities. The tapering fears have been, put to the side. This Evergrande shit's been put to the side.
Oh God, we're being spammed in the chat. Sorry, by
why
Boss.
Not crypto? Why not crypto too?
Looks like the Boss token community is here to spam.
Do not buy that token. That token is doo-doo.
Guys, this has happened to us before, and I actually got shouted out on Twitter after. They're like, "You are an asshole. You called our project a scam." Look, I don't know what Boss token is, but if you ever send an army of people to a YouTube chat to just shell it, it's just a scam. It's a bad look.
Boss token is a rug. Boss token is a rug. Boss token
I don't know it. I'm gonna step back from.
Boss token is a rug. Boss token is a rug.
I'll let Messi talk about that, but seriously, we've just
check out YouTuber Zero Wang's Boss token.
We just got what do you call Pico workers just sent in here
shit.
to Boss token.
It's a rug. I can't. Boss token's a rug.
Yeah, if we could, maybe our intern Victor,
we can talk about your rug.
Vic,
your rug the fuck out of here.
Get those Boss token mentions out of the chat, please. I don't like the
Boss
nobody got time for that. Yeah, Boss token probably not today. So look, I just can't take my eyes off this chart. It's a beautiful thing. It came into some levels, and we've got a strong bounce today, like you said, on the back of that FOMC. Tapering fears have subsided for now. It seems like it's probably inevitably just on the table, but I don't know. I don't even know what tapering is. I feel like it means that they stop, putting a floor on the market, but they start, tapering, taking it back.
Something that, I'm not.
We're gonna pull bonds.
I don't know about any of that shit too. I
think just know good or bad.
The Fed injecting liquidity into the bonds market.
Yeah, that's kind of what my take is. Something to do with propping up with bonds, but look. We're gonna come into this retest. There's a pretty good chance that we're gonna see this retest, and things will be very frothy and bullish at that level. I even think AVAX could make a new high before this next leg down, and then that next leg down for AVAX is still just mid 60s, low 60s. That's my hope. That's my position. But I'm definitely going to be playing the bull down here in those high 30s, where a lot of people are already looking, and a lot of people are thinking that's their exit point. A lot of people are saying that's the entry that will never come because it seems so obvious, like 25K did to a lot of people back here. I don't know. I'm not going to get into the predictions and the what ifs. I just know that what I'll do when it gets here, if it does, is take what dry powder I have, some of which I got this week because I said, wow, this is uncomfortable. I need to take profit. And, we could talk about that too, right? If you don't have a plan, or if you're not ironclad in what you've got positioned, oftentimes you do end up taking profit at support because you're still way up, but, things are getting ugly. So with that cash, I plan to deploy in the high 30s. I think these lows getting swept would be a beautiful picture as far as a wick bottom goes, but that's my plan. And from there we could consolidate and then form structure and go, or we could skip right back up and go, or we could just consolidate and keep going down. But we're going to cross that bridge when we get to it. For now, we've got what looks like a very strong daily candle going, and the trend is down. It takes a long time to reverse the trend, right? This is what, like 12, 14 days. So this trend can't really reverse until we put in another little low and then break that little midpoint. So weeks away probably from a new daily uptrend on Bitcoin. But enough about Bitcoin. It's not even that exciting. Let's look at AVAX again. The Trend Master. Now here somebody asked last week, they said, what is Trend Master? It's just an indicator suite or whatever. And I think I paid like $200 lifetime, not affiliated with them. I've spoken to the founders before just because they're in their Discord, but it's a cool tool. And I like to use it because it helps me stay on track with something I feel really bullish on. So I'm like, on those down days, you can see here, there was no real signal to get out of this long trend. There was a potential one back here, but it has to close below the wick of that signal candle. It never did that either.
Wait, what? Oh, you're on Hiken.
Yeah, so this is kind of.
I was looking at that right now, and it says 64. I was like, bro, your chart is wrong.
It's weird because Hikinashi, it's something to do with the average, right? And so until this candle closes, like this thing will live down here. But yeah, you can see here the price is actually up at 71. Anyway, so this is a tool I use kind of on the side. Like I don't trade it religiously, but when I'm having a dark day, when the market looks like shit, when one of my positions is starting to make me sweat, I'll come here. I'm like, trend is still up. And this thing will hold the trend really well. And the thing is, though, because it's a trend following indicator, it will also get out of positions late. So like, for example, AVAX technically, well, this was a little fractal for trailing stop loss. So technically, like if you ran AVAX earlier this year, you didn't get out until a pretty good amount off the highs, like 44% drawdown. So I use it with a grain of salt, mostly just to strengthen my hands during volatile uptrends. And then I'll use things like chaos PRZs along the way and do my own thing. But
I mean, shit is going up right now. The way I see it, like the first level of resistance here is going to be around $100. And if we can manage to get beyond that, that brings into play 200, 225, something like that. It's interesting, to think about the timing of all this. I do think that, we do top out at some point, probably in the next month. And once again, it's very difficult to time the top. Like let's say right now I thought it was topped, and I was like, okay, well I'm just gonna, I'm gonna sell my assets right now. Made plenty of money. I could very well just sell and just watch this shit do another 3x, and
had a good year and wait for the next bear market.
Be coping about it. I think that the best way to play this right here is just to know that, okay, there's a lot of like epic catalysts. Like we're gonna see Ave and Curve go live very shortly. Like that's gonna bring in a lot of flows. Like those flows are gonna drive price. Because the market cap to TVL is going to be, it's going to make more sense for AVAX. It's just like Solana. You see the TVL getting jacked up. The price of Solana was jacked up along with that TVL. But you got to remember, like we've got these epic catalysts, like pretty near term. You've got that. You've got a potential Coinbase listing in the cards, like all of these things. And at what point? Which one of these catalysts is going to be like the euphoria? Or are we going to get a Coinbase listing and blast $150 and everybody's going to be celebrating? And it's just be mindful of that. And look, I do think that these things can run a lot harder than people could ever imagine. Especially if we get a situation to where Bitcoin goes full risk on, and it's making new all-time highs and things like that.
What a liquidity draw that would be.
Call your expectations, and also manage your portfolio, and just know that nothing lasts forever. And as much fun as I'm having right now, and as much money as I've made in the past month, it's just one of those things where I am cognizant that the music stops at some point. So how am I getting out alive? Well, the idea is to go ahead and start shaving a little bit off daily to stables. Uh, and the thinking behind that is that eventually, there is going to be a top, and if I have been selling like 1% of my net worth per day or something like that, then I will have averaged out and I will have exposure to that top at some point. Because the thing is, if I start selling 1% per day every day right now, and in a month I look at AVAX, I'm like, holy shit, we're at $155, or we're at $200. You can always at that point say, oh, this has gotten fucking nuts, I'm out, I'm pulling the trigger, like let's move on. But right, as far as I'm concerned right now, like, look at the chart, for a fact that we're about to have billions in inflows, like very near term. Like, shit's gonna go up. It's gonna keep being that coin that people are salty about. It's gonna keep being that coin.
I'm surprised. Yeah, like I'm seeing a lot of cope about it. I'm seeing a lot of people that are like, wait, what's AVAX? Like decently sized accounts that still haven't even looked at it. And if anything, that's just kind of bullish.
Here's the thing. I mean, it's not
saturated.
It's not a crowded trade, and that kind of became a meme that the AVAX trade is crowded. Like, I don't think it's a crowded trade. I just think that
it's got
there are a few
bubbles,
people that are in this ecosystem, and I think nobody else is fucking talking right now because no one else is making any money. So I would understand how it would come across that way. When you look at your Twitter feed, and the only people that are bull posting, the only people that are excited are guys in the AVAX ecosystem.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah. So like we talk about that a lot. The guys on Twitter, you post when your position is up. So to your point, yeah, if nobody's real positions are up, then the only guys really talking right now are AVAX, and that's a really good point. And like you said earlier in the show, it is one of the first times that I've felt positioned optimally in the market, as it turns out, right? Like you just don't get to be all the time. And even if I am, like Solana, I did do some Solana DCAing this summer at the lows, and that felt brilliant. I was like, actually almost bought the low on like Oxy and Ray, thinking I was just DCAing slowly, and it ended up being that. But it wasn't size, right? Like I wasn't like, oh, conviction's so high, I'm just going to size up. It was a great trade. I actually did end up closing, Solana a little early, and then the rest of my Solana bags I just dumped after this candle because I was just like, this just looks cooked. There was lots of signs of euphoria in the market around here, subtle euphoria, maybe not full blown, but like local high type shit. And now we've got pretty picture perfect correction happening. And that's why I love TA, because when the sky is falling and people are ready to pack it in and there's FUD, and you're actually just going through a very normal, very on par with, what happens in crypto type correction. And it doesn't mean it's fun. It doesn't mean it's easy. It's a 46% drop from the highs, and somebody bought that high. Somebody bought that high, and they might have sold it 5 minutes later. You don't know that they're still underwater, but the point is, this is not that concerning. Although you drive some narratives into it, it's often driven by narrative, right? You get the rally narrative, you get the pullback narrative, and the narrative now is, Evergrande, China,
I am interested.
U.S. equities.
I wonder
Solana
what
network.
That chart would have looked like without the downtime that occurred. I wonder if that downtime set Solana's momentum back a bit.
I mean, it certainly didn't help the momentum, but I think the correction in my mind was already written on the charts, and that's what I was saying earlier too. Like TA tends to line up with these FA events where, it's like, I thought it was fascinating to me that it was like got super overcooked. Now, did that cause the network issue, right? Was it the user explosion, and then maybe somebody targeted it with that sort of DDoS attack, or the 400k TPS, whatever that thing was that kind of messed it up. Was that just random, or was it somehow associated with this? I don't know. It's really hard to say, and it's really anyone's guess. But if we don't stop here and consolidate, so as far as like, okay, we got the chart up, let's talk about, how am I trading it? Well, we're at resistance now, and we're in a downtrend. So there's just there's no signal here for me to say this is where I want to buy now. But we get something like this, we just do whatever here, and then we break out of that. Now we're in an uptrend.
This is definitely like a momentum market, and there's clear winners here, and there's things that are stronger than other things. I think the most important thing here is just to understand that, once again, what goes up must come down. And look, I'm a strong believer that Solana is one of the best alternate L1s out there. But at the same time, that doesn't mean it's up only forever. there's a lot of different people that are in these ecosystems, with different time horizons, with different objectives, with different goals. You've got to understand, that some people aren't sweating this because they're going to hold Solana for 5 years and maybe sell it at $1,000 one day, and they're not really concerned about what's going on right now. But if you look at Solana, it went from $10 to $200 or something like that.
It was lower than that. Yes.
Solana was the coin
bucks
for a while that was almost like what AVAX is right now. It was the one that people weren't feeling any pain with. It was the one that people were only making money with. It's been extremely strong, and there's a lot of huge money behind this. It's not just Sam. We're talking trading.
It's like his best friends, their best friends, those guys' friends.
And they've all put their name on this, and they're all providing liquidity for this, and supplying TVL to the ecosystem. One of the most difficult challenges that Solana has that networks like AVAX don't is not only do you have to bridge people over, and that's a challenge in itself, but you also have to onboard them to the Solana experience because it's not EVM. It's not what people already know. It's not what people are used to. And that's okay. I think they did a fantastic job of that. It'll be interesting to see. I think this year, especially if Bitcoin can perform, I don't think we've seen the last of Solana. I think we're going to see
definitely not. Definitely not.
300, 400 bucks.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're building towards, it's like Dan and Rob said, even near the highs, like they don't care. They don't look at charts very much. Rob does, but Dan just is like, here's my thesis. Here's a level. He likes to buy the deeper dips.
Solana's building a lot for these institutional clients. People keep talking about this institutional money, coming into DeFi. I think Solana is being purposely built for that. They want to
speed and scale.
Yeah, they want to take on the NASDAQ.
And that was the big. That was the eye opener for me. We were talking about Serum back in February on the stream, and Dan said, look, just to be clear, this is not let's see if we can be the next Uniswap. It's like, let's see if we can put the NYSE on the blockchain. That's the vision, that's the scale, that's the scope. And once he said that to me, I was like, damn, this really is something that I want to be looking at over a period of years. As a trader, I'm going to be out on swings. But as an investor, as a speculator, I would like to build longer term positions. Now, the reason I pulled up this back part of this chart, and there was some writing on the wall here for Solana this year, and I don't think it was lost on us. We've been kind of bullish the whole way through, even though down here I was saying I'm going to wait a bit. But this breakout, I still remember this day. Remember, the whole market was red. Bitcoin had just nuked. It was dropping down. This was the day. So Bitcoin was just on a free fall. And you looked at Solana and it was up whatever it was, 30-40% on the day, and Serum was, and then of course Bitcoin really nuked, and this thing can't survive anything like that. But this to me was holy shit, the bid is strong. It is almost like pulling away from the broader crypto market. And so it's not surprising then that, to me, when all this ended, that it didn't really waste any time getting to work and being sort of first out of the gate. And so when this little candle came in, I think I've made a Twitter post that day, or it was up here actually. I think candle body highs. I don't know. It was this retest. There was a trend line here. I don't know.
How many percent?
It was
percentage points did Solana do from lows to the highs?
Oh, a couple 100%. Let's see.
If you bought that bottom,
877. I thought it was 200 and something.
Yeah, that's just astounding.
If you picked up the Pico lows, and it did give. I remember on these two. This is the one thing I'm kicking myself about, and it's you can never be perfect, so you just do what you can. You get out a little better than last time, but when it hit 20 a couple times and then bounced over these weeks that it was up, I remember thinking God, I missed the 20. I want the 20. And then of course the 20 came in, and all I was thinking about is focusing on Bitcoin and is this the bottom, and then long Bitcoin. And it was actually Solana that at 20s was the
right now at $150 Solana, it is the number 7 coin by market capitalization. Which is really interesting. You look at Avalanche, so Solana, $44 million market cap. You look at Avalanche, and you look at it and you're like, hey, this is getting kind of expensive. Is it, how much more does it have to go? We're looking at a $16 million cap here. So in order to hit the same levels that Solana did, we're looking at a 3x, on the entire ecosystem. That would be like $200 avalanche, which is, it's kind of hard to conceive, but at the same time, I think that the guys that were like all in Solana and had that heavy Solana exposure, like, they went through that as well. Like there were so many people out there that were talking about shorting Solana and stuff at around $80. Like they got blown the fuck out. Like, it was, you just don't do it. The thing is Ethereum.
I shorted Solana at 115, but I got quickly stopped out. During this consolidation, I was short right here. It was sick. It was sick because it was actually up really nicely, like in the first 2 days that I was in it, and then I was like, cool, I did it, and I was going to short it down to these highs, and then I just got blown out. I ended up
the thing
taking the
AVAX,
L on that trade.
When you look at that structure though, compared to the Solana structure, we really haven't had that just face melting parabolic leg yet. And if you look at Solana, it was, I was just talking going about parabolic for 2 weeks. Like we could see that on AVAX where you have a 2 week period of time where you just look at it and one day it's $100, the next day it's 110, the next day it's 120. At some point,
more news hits, more bullishness.
More news hits, more bullishness, but
more
not only
influencers
that,
start talking about it.
More supply, more and more supply is just locked up, and taken off market, and you get into these kind of liquidity crisis situations.
I mean, look at this. And I was just talking about this morning with Pasta, actually. I wonder if you're in there. But we were having a chat this morning about, he's kind of like my DeFi coach. He teaches me about that. He loves my charts. I share charts and ideas with him. He gives me the goods on how to farm and do that stuff that I'm too embarrassed to ask everyone else. And so we were chatting today about AVAX, and like, this just doesn't look like, oh no, is that the top? It could be. It always could be. But when I see this kind of volume pour into a coin, and right here you're saying, okay, the announcement of the Rush incentives, and there's that's a ton of liquidity. We've talked about that. That's not mom and pop buying, right? That's hundreds of millions of dollars of volume flowing into this, and not a whole lot of it leaving. The sells here were all fairly insignificant, and then another big chunk here, and it was at the Three Arrows Capital kind of announcement. There was just like another. They basically said, yeah, we're going to put in a couple $100 million, and so like this is the right kinds of hands building a floor on what I see as like a broader up move on the high time frames. And when you see this as kind of, even like earlier this year during the spring rally, the volume was a pittance compared to the very consistent high and intense increase we've seen. And then you just get this kind of choppy, slow starter, and this kind of stuff often ends in a parabolic move and just gets ridiculous and very much like we saw with Solana. So it's a gradually and then suddenly thing, and I think this is
cooling up. I think that the next leg is the parabolic one. After these two pushes up like that, people laugh, but that is vertical accumulation. That's exactly what's going on. It's marking up, it's claiming that level, and then we move up. At some point, it's going to go parabolic, and typically, I think that happens a lot on the third leg, for a lot of these shitcoins. This would be, no, I don't even think we have, like, I don't know, maybe I've squished the chart too much. So yeah, okay, maybe 1, 2. Usually it's, if you're going to think about it in terms of like cycles and waves, it's like 1, 2, and then the midpoint is the big one, and then you get a pullback, and then you get like an exhausted small kind of finisher. And like, but that middle one, and I think we're still midway through it. The money shot. And that's where you just blow, it's like the breakout, retest, and then there's just this massive rally. Yep.
And then a pullback, and you think it's over, and then you get one more, you FOMO back in, you just spot the highs, and it's over, and then you get the ABC. So yeah, I think we're actually, if anything, if you're going to look at that, it's a lot harder to spot in advance. It's more something I see backwards. I'm like, oh, look at that, we had a full cycle. But yeah, and then the majors are just really struggling right now to support this kind of move. So we're seeing it be choppy and slow. But yeah, I think we are just in a very strong uptrend, and just a matter of wait and see. I mean, this thing was putting in higher lows while Bitcoin nuked this week. That's incredibly important information. I mean, you can't ignore that shit. And when Rob's on and we have lots more we can talk about, we'll talk about a lot more things. We will probably get to a couple chart requests here, but today we can talk about the strength in the market. I mean, that's what we want to do when it's quiet. It's what we want to do when it's loud. And the reason I pulled up Bitcoin here is because, just as an example, last year, that gradually and suddenly thing, right? So you move up, you kind of break out, unsure, disbelief, sell off, consolidate, and then it just goes. And it goes and it goes faster and it goes faster and it really just accelerates and takes off. And then in this case, it was a weird top. It's kind of like a rolling, boring, slow top. And yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think we're going to see a bigger version of that. That's my guess for this year. That's how I'm positioning, is that, you know, we chop here similar to the way we did back here at around 10 and 12K. And then eventually from this, we end up into what might be something as an extension of this, like very similar. So we'll see. But predictions aren't really worth a whole lot. It's about deciding, you know, what you're going to do at whatever level and how you're going to manage your own positions. And for me, that's adding here or on some kind of reclaim higher, and that's fine. Or, you know, adding dips on AVAX. I'm just so bullish on it. Like, I don't even know what Snowball was. Now it's going live in 10 minutes. Just like another network upgrade, and it's going to reduce fees and make fees more efficient. And
so Snowball
hit me
is actually a huge upgrade. Okay, it's not only does it have MEV protective qualities, but it also changes the dynamic fee range in the network, which means, you know, when the network is underutilized, that fees will be cheaper. It also increases the throughput of the network. It really is a huge upgrade. And look, AVAX has already like handled current loads beautifully, but this upgrade
they're admittedly small, right? Like, we want to think like, what if ETH kind of throughput was needed? Would they suffer?
This is about to get fucking crazy. Somebody mentioned PEFI. I will say, so if you go to their website, Penguin Finance,
they're moving today.
It's performing really, really well today. They've actually just announced that the staking phase for the Boo Finance offering, which is a pretty interesting new product. Look, people are just dying for a new product, right? This has been my thesis on PEFI for a while. We're finally at the stage, and this is just how early we are, to where new shit like starts launching and things get popping a little bit over here, right? And PEFI has a launch pad. And to access these IDOs, these no KYC IDOs, you have to have a certain amount of PEFI staked. So I think, you know, PEFI finally updated their launchpad page. You know, they're showing when this Boo Finance thing is going to go live. Like, I think people have bought PEFI in anticipation of this. You know, they're ready to go. They're ready to rock. But the thing is I'm going to keep my PEFI because I think anything new, especially early on, that launches here, is just free multiples. So if I can get top tier access, I can get this IDO, you know, throw in 500 AVAX, whatever amount they're going to let me do. Like, I feel like that's I'm going to make a free 3X there.
Yeah, it's usually small, right? Like with the public launch sales, you might have a $250 allocation, but like on BSC pad, I think it was earlier this year, like there was some coming out and they were just like 250X. And so, yeah, you put in $250, but like some guys were walking away with 30, 40, 50K. And then you can kind of scoff at the risk and be like, a couple $100, like let's just punt it at everything. So I agree with you. I think this downtrend line looks, you know, like we're going to lose it today. And so any kind of retest here.
I mean, right now, look,
I'm going to cope because I don't have much PEFI. And I think you need 50,000 of them for top tier access.
Is it 50? Did they announce
that? Somebody in the pit mentioned this morning. I didn't look it up after that, but they said, yeah. And that might be part of the announcement why everyone's buying it now. But yeah.
Hey, look, it
did not load
once
PEFI
again, like
this week.
When Solana was going nuts, there was so much going on, right? There were new projects launching, new NFT mints going on. Like, there was a ton of activity, and there was a lot of people talking about it. Like, with Avalanche, you know, I understand, oh, you're early. You know, people last week said, oh, you're euphoric. I said that I was pre-euphoric. You know, and the reason, you know, it's like foreplay. You know, when you're engaging in foreplay, you know, like you're getting in the mood, like you're getting hard, right? Because you know what's about to happen. You know, in your head, you know that, oh yeah, you know, it's about to go down. This is me. The thing is I feel like that with AVAX. You know, I'm engaging in foreplay. It feels good, you know. having a little bit of fun.
Haven't climaxed yet though.
I haven't climaxed. I haven't seen that
like
parabolic leg. I haven't seen that situation where you've got a new project launching in AVAX every day now. I haven't seen that
That's the thing, right? We're so far from saturation of that network, and that's where I see the inevitable outcome.
You can't saturate it.
And so it's really a case of me trying to not overthink, which I did a little bit of this week, but it was mostly just because I looked at my exposure. I was like, holy fuck, like who do I think I am? Like I've gotta consolidate a bit, if anything, and I rotated a few things, but if you look at it objectively, and we've already done the chart ad nauseum, it's not parabolic. There's nothing there that's like, oh no, I've topped, long term. Maybe there's like a midterm roll down here, whatever. Nothing about it is screaming top like NFTs this summer, or even like Solana when it hit that 88.7 Chaos PRZ, or like another one that was a fan favorite this week or this year, and we kind of, I don't know if I was going to say nailed it, but feel pretty good about like the TA on this one, because getting up into this Chaos PRZ on AXS. And last Friday, my point was that things did look a little bearish, and if I wanted to get short on the market, I was going to choose something that was up in highs, no longer the flavor of the month. And you can see the volume just disappeared on AVAX, even as it made this final new high. God, I wish I was watching. Don't know if I'd have the balls to have shorted that, but the pullback coming down, the air is out of this one. It's got to now correct. And the other thing about AXS is that there's now 50 to 100 new gaming plays coming up. I've personally looked at 10 pitch decks in the last 3 weeks of, and it's amazing. Even when I looked at this morning and they were like, we've been building for 3 years. I'm like, well, suddenly everybody's just fucking launching then, because a lot of them are claiming that they've been around a long time, and I'm sure they have. But it's this,
it's always like that.
Yeah, so that
you got something like AXS that just, blows everyone's expectations out of the water. Like it's, of course everybody's going to come in and, try to get a piece of that cake.
Yeah, and play to earn. And Dan and I, we talked about this earlier on the show. I just said, look, I'm not worried about having missed AXS. It feels great to catch things, but having missed it, I was like, I don't really care, because the echo plays, there's going to be 200 play to earn games by the end of the year, which was my kind of off the cuff prediction, but it looks like we're already at 200, probably headed to 1,000 by mid next year. And so my point on Friday was AXS might be cool, and you might be able to make $10 a day in Indonesia or wherever the people are playing it, that's important money for them. But the newer play to earns are going to come out and have incentives and things, and they're going to pay more. And I don't think anyone gives a shit about what game they're playing when they're playing for their rent or whatever the whole thesis was, right? So this is going to get diluted. It's going to get spread out. It's going to get fractured, if you will, or whatever. The
market's going to be saturated, and AXS rode up on that wave of NFT hype, and like, look, please don't, hang me for this, like, but I just like, I'm not in the trenches on NFTs. Like, I'm not on the front lines. Like, I'm not.
Sadly, neither of us are. Yeah.
Sadly, neither of us.
Look,
that is a sad thing, because it was an incredible market, right? We missed it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, it seems, at least from the posting that I'm seeing, that NFT market may have cooled off a little bit, and I think things that rode the back of that market, I think they're topped out, and I think people are going to rotate out of them. Like, that's absolutely bearish structure in AXS. Like, if I was in that, I would be jumping ship right now.
It's funny. Last weekend, we talked about this on Friday on the stream, but then last weekend I ended up not taking any shorts in this because I couldn't find an entry that I liked. This might be an interesting entry, especially if you're looking at Bitcoin and ETH saying maybe they're bearish. Well, this thing looks cooked. Let me tell you that again. Looks absolutely fucking cooked. I mean, a beautiful cycle. Love it. Coping hard. Yeah, okay. But the volume leading into that and then exhausting, bearish divergences, chaos PRZ, it's absolutely cooked. So I actually might put on a little hedge here because I still have a ton of long exposure in the market. And like I always say, if I want to short something, if your bet is that Bitcoin and ETH are going to go down, then you can short anything in crypto, just about, and it'll pay off. So why not pick the things that have had their rallies, that are way up? Because if something's already just sitting at its lows, it's boring right now. Like, where's your move, right? There's no sellers baked into that. This thing might be one of the better short proxies in the market. I think I made a list. Let's see. No, this must be an old list because it's got AVAX on it. Oh, Dot today. Look at Dot moving on up. Nice little candle. I saw it today this morning in the zone. I was like, oh damn, but it's moving up. I don't have any Dot right now. It's a shame. But parachains are coming. Don't sleep on the Polkadot ecosystem. And Atom, like I just think these L1s, there's still a few out there that AVAX is, if anything, Solana AVAX are paving the way. And we're seeing that strength again today on L1s.
Okay, so I'm thinking is Snowman plus live?
Technically, this moment, I think it was 5 p.m. Eastern. Yep. So literally just went live like this second. I don't know what to look for in that. I think it's more of a back end kind of thing, but it should enhance the using of it and the scaling of it. So I did read through this morning. It's a little bit devy for my liking, but the subheadings were important. Block based fees, C chain. What stood out to me about this was how they all just seem to be on the same page. They're like, yeah, we're Avalanche, we're Ava Labs, and we're just going to do this. We have an update, we have research, and we're just, whereas when it comes to Ethereum and the miners and the decentralized, it is arguably, truly way more decentralized and OG, but they feel like they're just fighting a lot. There's a lot of in-house fighting. There's a lot of like votes and
the culture over here is really good.
So it's slow. It's slow to develop, and that might bite
guys,
in
I'm
the
actually
ass.
getting word right now that the AVAX network is already 90% upgraded to Snowman and
Nice.
that it is live and a massive success. So
Perfect. That's
good
really
stuff.
good to hear, and I wonder how that is going to affect the 5-minute.
It doesn't seem like the price is really reacting.
No, and it really shouldn't. It's not like it's a known, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, again, if I was like short term anything on this, like this is where
I mean, some quality of life improvements. It's is it like a huge technical achievement? Yeah, but in terms of are the users really even aware? Not really. Look, my transaction is going to be 20 cents now instead of 40 cents. Like, okay, that's great. Thank you.
yeah, it's subtle, but it's setting the groundwork for something a little more. Now, this is why I put the short reload zone on here today, because I just thought, we're moving up this morning. I was like, okay, like maybe we get up in here. Am I going to put a hedge on for my AVAX exposure because it's big? But I don't know. Like, it's just a trade if I do it. It's not like I have to be right. But we're having all of the, if you will, pieces to a low time frame short setup, and I don't know why I need to talk about shorting AVAX because it's the strongest chart in the market right now, but I'm a trader, so we're going to talk about it. But
You dare talk about it.
I know, it's like
Short
channel
setup. What are you
gets
talking about?
yeah, channel gets shut down. But like it's just this kind of thing, right? Like, and then you get like, oh, and then it's like, oh, and then it's fib pong, and then whatever. So
Like here's all you
this
guys
is
need
how
to know.
this is what I do on futures. I just sit around and I take 15-minute
Put the
trades.
TA to the side. Like
Yeah.
we have Aave and Curve launching probably within the next day, and there's going to be billions of dollars crossing the bridge to flesh those out. If you look at Aave on Polygon, I think there's 3 billion in TVL there alone.
Yeah.
So imagine, half of that comes to AVAX. I mean, there's literally at least $1 billion of flows coming in. That's going to increase the network's value. It's just going to go up. It just is.
Yeah. And that's sort of actually, as I sit here and do all this kind of overthinky stuff, I mean, this wouldn't be like, hey, I'm going to sell my spot in case I can buy it back $10 cheaper. But my futures account, why not take a little shot? It's just sitting there in cash. But through this, this has not been a place to start being like, okay, I've made enough on AVAX, like my spot, I'm just going to get in, get out. I've done it a couple times with certain amounts of it, and I've always regretted it every single time. It's been a bad trade. So PCZs have hit the whole way up, right? You get into here, get up, get it back into here the other day. And so when you have a strong high time thesis, and this might be just more general advice, if you will, and very general, not financial advice, but like how to approach the market. Like grab a high time thesis, find something that you think, like we do, is very promising, and it's like a really hard to just not see AVAX explode in projects launched and users and in the coming days, because the tech underlying it is tech underlying it is just so fantastic. that this is the thesis. And so then, okay, RT, stop fucking looking at these little scalps all day. Go short AXS if you want to.
Zoom out, bro. Zoom out.
And then not get caught offside on the broader trade and perhaps the much easier trade, like you said, just fucking park it and chill. But I do like to trade, so sometimes I take my little 15-minute setups.
I'm just, I'm not worried about the TA. Like I said, so my plan is solely like, hey, I know these flows are coming. I front run those flows. Like Bitcoin looks risk on, crypto looks risk on. This hasn't gone parabolic yet. Just hold and wait. And in the meantime, do a little bit of farming. Make a little bit more. There's some fantastic APYs right now you can chase.
Yeah, there's actually
the
26% 26% APY just on stablecoins right now. And Joe, I tweeted that out this morning because
believe it or not, it's actually higher than that. That 26% is just the farm APY. You have to actually add in the native APY of the LP position, which is around 10%. So,
do you still get those when you're farming? So like you take your LP tokens out of the
you'd
pool?
be
I thought on Uniswap you had to choose between like those
No.
fees.
So that LP position natively accrues fees, and those fees are accrued without you having to do anything. So like let's
just
say,
within the LP token itself.
Yeah. Let's say I put $500,000 of USDT and $500,000 of USDC, and I don't have a farm to stake it in. I'm just a liquidity provider. Over time, I could go back and look at that, and I might end up with 550 of both, or something like that. Just because as people are trading, I'm accruing those fees, those exchange fees, directly to my LP position. So all of that is actually contained within the LP position. If I take that LP token then, and I, stake it in a farm, like on Joe, not only is that LP token, gaining value because it's accruing those trade fees, but then I'm getting those farm rewards on top of that.
So that's basically what I did this week. I rotated some of my positions, which were just frankly, way oversized in my portfolio. And I decided, look, I don't know what's going to go on with China. I don't understand broader markets. I think Bitcoin has one more leg down anyways. So on the bounce, for some of it, on the dip for others, I rotated some of that to stables and I started farming it on there. And yeah, it's a nice chunk each day. It's boring in a bull where you're like, oh, like the position that Joe went up like a friggin' $1 today. But I know there's a lot of stable guys out there who just like to look for yield. And as somebody who has parked a lot of their funds on Nexo for like more of a savings account, the Joe farm right now is pure stables, and it is twice as much.
30% on stables is just fantastic, and it won't last forever. I would imagine. Okay, I would imagine that throughout the course of Avalanche Rush, and this is another thing I've talked about, like. Look, especially a lot of the guys that have been viewing this channel, like I feel like we got in on this Avalanche shit pretty early. Like if you've made life-changing money here, you can literally start averaging out into these stable pools and make great returns.
Monthlies,
no directional risk. You don't need, as long as these crypto markets are bullish, the yield is going to be great. So, hey, fuck it. I made a shit ton of money. Do I really need to 2x from here? Do I really need to 3x from here? Why not just say, hey, with no directional risk, I'm going to just make around this much money this year. I mean, fuck, I can't imagine a better feeling. I've been in this hell of volatility for, 8 years now. Like
and when you nail it, it feels great. But when you're underwater and you didn't need to be, it's worse than sitting out of perhaps the full move. And this is a really good conversation to have. It's one we've had a few times before on the show around. I know I got to find this. There's
a little trick. If you scrunch it up all the way over to the left while it's still on auto scale, then you can drag the axis and then drag it back over, and you won't have to sit there and do that shit forever.
Okay.
Or you can sit there and do that shit forever. Either one works.
I do enjoy it, but
what do you earn yield on stables with the best return? That's a good question.
Oh, yes.
Taylor.
There you go. Good trick.
I think,
okay, I'm going to actually do it here, though. This is a better chart. Yeah, that is a weird, frustrating thing.
I think you have to look at places like Curve, Aave, there's a couple of different ways you can actually earn money on those stable positions. You can do it
There
through
it
being a
is.
lender. You can do it through being a liquidity provider. So right now on Ethereum, if you look at potentially probably the best stable yield, you're probably looking at something like three pool, which is a curve pool. And I think that three pool is comprised of DAI, USDC, and USDT. So you actually maintain exposure to all three of those. You accrue fees within that LP position, as I described earlier, and then you can take that LP position and stake it on Convex. But even then, I think you're only getting maybe 8% yield there, maybe 7. So what you have to actually do is you have to use leverage in your farming. And you can do that on Abracadabra if you go there and run maybe like 3 loops, 50% borrow against your collateral. You can actually leverage that 3 pool up, and like let's say of course a USDT is worth like $1, right? Your liquidation price might be 70 cents on USDC or something like that. The thing is that if that were to occur, we'd all kind of be fucked anyway. So it doesn't, it doesn't necessarily matter too much that you would have been liquidated.
Like any other asset you were sitting in might have been in deep shit.
Yeah,
regardless.
anything. Yeah, I mean,
especially if you were just sitting in Tether.
If Tether lost its peg, like the whole crypto ecosystem.
Tether has lost its peg once. I forget exactly when it was, but I remember because Beamish posted a chart. He's like, stablecoin, eh? And it had like taken a crazy dip.
I think I remember that. It was down at like 80 cents or something.
Yeah,
like
and it was like
for a very short period of time.
Might have been the March 2020 thing. Like I don't know when it was, but there was some crazy squeeze in the market and it just lost its peg. But that one's a little different because it's not like an algo stable thing. I mean, they've got the idea anyways, and I know everyone's like, oh, tether this, tether that, but like the idea is they mint new tethers when people put cash into their account, and so theoretically at any time you could take a tether and take it to them and get your dollar. But I've never actually taken it that way. I've always just played with them on the exchanges. They're my poker chips. To reference
look, guys, here's the thing, like stables, when you are just like, if you are at that point that I just described and you're like, hey, I made a ton of money, this is life changing for me, like if I could just make 10% a year on this, 5% a year on this amount right now, like that would change my life forever. Like you can of course do that without the directional risk, right? Which is fantastic. But the number one thing to remember is you're still exposed to that smart contract risk. So for anybody that's considering doing that, I would advise you to put your eggs in one basket. You don't have to take 100% and make that best yield out there. You can take 10% and lend it out on Aave. You can put a little bit on 3 pool and Curve. You can provide liquidity on Joe and chase that 30% with a piece of it. But I would be exposed not only to multiple ecosystems, but multiple platforms. That way, if one of them goes down, does it suck? Yeah, but it's not like end of the world. It doesn't take you out of the game.
Yeah, it's a couple things. God, I always want to talk about so much on the show. We are getting past the top of the hour. We're gonna wrap it up shortly, guys. But a couple questions in the chat that I want to get to after I comment on what you just said. Now, my end game, and this is where I struggled a bit this week. My end game has always been, it's never been to just be like, okay, when I hit this number, I'll take everything out, because that's just too big a decision. Like you say, you watch it 3x after that, it'll be very painful. So it's more about skimming into stables to do exactly what you just said, which is to spread the risk. Nexo was my kind of starting point. It's about 8 to 10%, and it's insured. It's an Eastern European bank. It's kind of like a crypto bank and offering good borrow lends. But the fact that they have $350 million of insurance helps me sleep at night, because it's meant to be that thing that has no risk. And so that's where I started. And then I switched some to Joe this week because I realized it can get 2x the APY. And for what it's worth, I trust that Joe smart contract enough to take that risk on partial. And then maybe it's a 3 pool, and maybe it's a little bit of sort of what's going on.
The thing is, like with Joe, I would consider that, and look, anything can get exploited. Like, let's just be clear about that. But I would consider Joe relatively safe, because I believe Joe builds on battle-tested Uniswap V2 contracts, and also battle-tested staking and farming contracts. They're not that complicated. They have been hacked, not Joe per se, but these kinds of contracts. But if you're deploying, if you're farming anything, I stay away from code that is new code. I
Yeah.
want to see like Aave. People trust Aave so much because Aave has battle tested code.
I
We're
was
talking
wondering about that the other day.
billion,
Like, how is Aave
billions.
so safe, right? And I was thinking,
I
what the
think
hell would
they
happen if
just
they
did a
got
really good
exploited?
job, and
Yeah.
over time, the thing is Aave didn't always have 25 billion in TVL. Like over time, that TVL grew. The incentive to hack Aave increased, and I'm sure exploits were found. And a lot of times, though, hackers will find these exploits, and hopefully they're white hat. They'll forward it to the team, and they can get it patched before anything happens. But at the same time, like, look, you don't. There's definitely like a risk reward factor to everything you do here, and that includes farming. So for me, like, let's say I have an opportunity to get 10% of my stables in a really safe environment, like maybe when Aave goes live on AVAX or something like that. And then I have another opportunity in some new Ponzi farm that just launched that's going to pay me 50% on my stables. Like, I'll take that 10% all day because I'm not going to get rugged. Like, I'm taking that rug risk out of the equation as
Yeah.
much as I possibly can because, okay, I was chasing 50%, but was that extra 40% worth it for a chance that I lose every bit of, money I put in there? No. To me, it never is.
No, and that's why I like hanging out with you, because a lot of the times you'll get into something and you've figured out who's the dev, or you've looked through the code, and so
you want to have
I don't
a
know how to look
trusted
through
dev.
code.
You want to have that battle tested code. Every fucking time. Like, look, DeFi is incredibly asymmetric, when it comes to risk reward. Like, there's totally a lot of opportunity here, but there's equally as much opportunity for you to do something fucking stupid and you to not be able to recover from that. And as somebody that's been rugged, you don't want to get rugged. It really does. It changes your outlook on things. Like, and look at Mark Cuban. Like, you're looking at a guy. He got
The
rugged
biggest
for
U-turn in history.
Yeah, he got rugged for 0.00001% of his net worth, and he's having a full fucking meltdown now. Like, I love Mark. I grew up watching Shark Tank. I still watch Shark Tank. He's one of my favorite guys on there. And I applaud him.
You respect him, but it's like,
I respect him, and I
that was a
applaud him
weird-
for
yeah.
he's actually gotten his hands dirty in this crypto shit. But at the same time, like, you look at somebody get rugged, and it does change you. Like, and it's somebody like us, like, if we get rugged, it might represent a significant percentage of our net worth. And, how are you going to pursue future opportunities again after having that experience where you just wake up one morning and you go, holy fuck, and my money's gone, and then there's nothing I can do about it. You're powerless. So,
Yeah.
I'd always say,
I was in one rug last year, but it was one that I'd already taken my free position back, because this was DeFi summer, and I finally started dabbling near the end, and I put 2 ETH into something. It doubled. I took a 2 ETH back, and then it rugged like a week later, and it still stung, but it wasn't. There's people that like these big exploits that happen, and I'm just like, they're like, oh, $600 million was drained from this pool, and I'm like, who the fuck has that kind of money in there? But it stings because there's a ton of people who do.
Somebody got smoked. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
and you're
remember
just thinking,
back in DeFi summer, and of course now, like, a rug is a much more general term. People apply it to a project getting market dumped by the pre-sale buyers. By really anything.
Any downside.
It's a rug.
BTC rugged.
Back in DeFi summer, like, the rugs were really bad. People were losing serious money. I still remember Yams, or I think it was Yams, but there was some kind of exploit in the smart contract, and there was like literally $1 billion farming this all unaudited code, and I think a lot of it was able to be salvaged and recovered. The exploit was identified, but at the same time, like, there's a lot of risk there. Most of the time now, because rugs have gotten, I'm not gonna say they've gotten less frequent, but a lot of these rugs on things that mean business, a lot of times, like, they're not as severe as they used to be. Most of the time now, a rug is going to be like, hey, new SHIB AVAX 2000, Doge just launched. Like, I'm gonna ape in, and
the copycat of the copycat of the fork.
Then you get rugged on that. And a true rug. There's really like two things that are really rugs in my mind. One of those being the creator, the initial supplier of liquidity for a project, pulls the LP after the price has gone up a lot. So he just says, hey, fuck it. You don't have any liquidity to sell into anymore. And thank you for aping into my rug. Then another kind of
Fuck.
rug is like an exploit or
Like,
something.
or an
like that.
infinite mint on the team side.
Yeah.
Like
People
they
get
just,
in,
yeah.
and either the team or an exploiter, gets control of those contracts, and they mint a gazillion tokens. You wake up and you look at the chart one day and you go, holy shit, what happened? This got dumped to zero. Well, infinite tokens were minted. That's what happened.
Yeah. Now, going back to the question in the chat that I wanted to address, somebody said, I really wanted to hear Rob this week, his take on the broader market, China, the Gensler commentary, the interview. He's not here, but what I will say is in the newsletter yesterday, I put this Twitter thread in from Raoul Paul. Now I always hear people like, oh, Raoul this, Raoul that. I don't know the guy. I don't know how you want to, whatever. But this thread is on point. I really appreciated it. It's sort of a sober take on this whole thing. And I think my takeaway, again, in the newsletter, herelabs.io, if you're interested, it's up there under the weekly tab. But the part that I really liked is basically the idea of how negotiations work. And that is where you just come in hard as nails, tough, trying to take way too much. And then you end up with some kind of compromise. And he drew some comparisons to the internet and how they originally kind of tried to come in and regulate the shit out of it. And then ended up finding compromises in e-commerce. And obviously now the internet is flourishing and it's all good. And so that may be sort of what we're headed to with crypto. I am not an expert on that, so don't take my word for it. Do your own research, talk to the experts, but I really liked his thread. So if you wanted Rob's take,
talk to the scientists.
I leave you with Raoul Paul.
Trust the scientists.
Because Hxro Labs officially has no stance on this, nor do I. Now, last thing I want to say today, chart-wise, is Popsicle Finance. Now, I hate that it's up at $5.46 now that we're talking about it because I'm really bullish on it regardless of this chart, and I was really bullish on it a few days ago through here. And so on the stream right now, 546. Not that you guys would ever go and buy something we talk about because none of this is financial advice. But this is probably one of my biggest new positions that I rotated into during the shit the other day because it is a Daniel Sesta coin. And I'm really high on what this guy's building right now. And I love his I love his vibe. And we've talked about him earlier in the show. And so this is his Twitter account. A few people in the chat said, who the hell's Daniel? So if you guys want to follow him, I am equating him. And again, I don't know who the hell and all the drama around Andre, but the way that it was like, oh, Andre coin. And he was building all this stuff. I get vibes like that from this as far as like this may turn into everything he touches just gets a boost. But aside from that, I just love what he's building.
The thing is, guys, like there's very little in terms of innovation right now happening in DeFi. So, if you find somebody that is innovating, if you find projects that are innovating, when I say innovating, there's a lot of bullshit innovation. There's a lot of LARPers, that are acting like they're
well, look at NFTs, right? There's like Soul Apes. This, like everything was copycat at the end.
But that's a lot of what happens, in DeFi too. And that's great. Open source code is great. We're going to take these building blocks that other people have done, created. We're going to build on that. And we're going to make it better. Whatever. Like that's the foundation of open source code. But the thing is like, look, we've got enough 600,000% APY Ponzi farms, like and shit like that. Like we don't necessarily need any more of that. It is cool to see new products being introduced to DeFi that are doing new things, that are doing cool things. And just as well, what's innovative about Popsicle? Well, Popsicle is like a cross-chain YFI almost. And not only do they do that, but they've got a product that manages your Uniswap V3 liquidity in a very efficient way. And the issue with Uniswap V3, of course, being that I can actually have much greater capital efficiency and much higher yield on my dollars than I can with Uniswap V2. But those LP positions need to be actively managed. You have to continuously redefine the range that you're providing liquidity. Popsicle does that. And it's something that's needed. Now, there is competition here, but this is innovative. It's a new product. It's a new service. It does something that's needed. So I'm bullish on it. It's one of those things where the risk reward asymmetry of my bet, I feel like is really good. If this works, we get a lot of TVL here. Well, the guys staking this get like 10% of platform fees. So
yeah,
I'm happy to hold this, stake it, see what happens.
What I liked, and I actually did go and read the docs this week because I wanted to put some size in it, and
Wow.
I thought I would actually read the docs for once because I always say okay, bullish on this because of this, because of that, just ape, okay, cool, but why token, why number go up? What's the demand feature? And if it is giving out all these rewards, isn't that the native token and that's inflation? But it's actually the case that the performance fees that are charged on these LP strategies